Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Glad you could all join me this afternoon. My name is Keith DeFazio. I'm a tech support specialist for IBS 360, and I'd like to bring you along with us today so we can take a little look at Honda occupancy detection systems. And let's get things going. We have a lot of slides to get through. Let's get our screen share going for you. Get ready for the trippiness. There it is. There we are. So, what is occupant detection? What's the purpose of knowing how much a passenger weighs? How accurate can the system be? Who's this made to protect? Are all the systems the same? Do we need any special tools? What happens if you do something wrong? And what's the actual purpose of the system? So, the purpose of the occupancy detection system is to identify the presence of an actual person in the seat to determine whether deployment is the correct option in the event of an impact. So what does that mean to us? Well, we need to know that there's actually somebody sitting in the seat, or at least someone that's there to have enough weight or enough presence on the seat for us to know that it's time to deploy the passenger side airbag. Sounds simple enough? So it's not really simple, but it's simplified in its description, and we'll get into a lot of that. There are many components involved in the system, lots of changes that they made throughout the years. So as we go through the years, you're going to start to see there's going to be a lot of changes. We know that all of our vehicles out there on the road now are changing. We have lots of progress in the field of things like advanced driver assistance, and not only that, but also our restraint systems as well. So let's go back all the way back to 2000, around the time that this first got started. On the Honda, let's pick in this case here, this is probably going to be a Civic, most likely, because that's where we saw a lot of them. They had two sensors that were located in the seat back. They were simple in the design, but they were very, very limited for testing. So what we had was a ladder style setup that was there to protect the occupant. So what we'll have here, and I'll get a little bit of a better picture for you, but in here, we have each one of these rows, and hopefully you guys can see my pointer on the screen right now. We have each one of these little rows here, and what they were used to do is they were really looking for height. And by judging height, we were able to determine what a person may weigh in the seat. Do we have a small child in the seat? Do we have a car seat that's in place? And that would only hit the lower rungs if it was facing the incorrect way. If it was facing the forward facing, we were still in danger. But these were the early setups that they had on there. Lots of different components on here. We had an OBDS sensor up here in the seat back. We had our front passenger side airbag. We had our seatbelt tensioners, like we had right away, in the later versions. You guys are all, I'm sure, used to seeing them. We had our seatbelt buckle tensioners. We had our side impact sensors. But we have a system here, though, that was pretty basic. So the lower number of the rungs on the ladder depressed, the smaller the occupant, and vice versa. The more rungs that we touched towards the top, obviously it was a larger person and probably more weight. So testing on these things were very simple. We had power, grounds, and a visual of the harness. We'll get right into that diagram now. So as far as testing goes, what can we actually test on these systems? And here we just have a fused power that comes down through our airbag cutoff indicator and goes down into the OPDS unit. Now this is the guy who's going to make all the decisions as to whether or not we actually have someone sitting in the seat. We have fuse number 9, just a hot and on or start power that comes in. And here we have ODUS. This is nothing more than a small communication line for the OPDS and the SRS to say, hey, there's been an impact. The OPDS says, oh, well, I have somebody that's large enough in the seat. Let's deploy the airbags. But what can we actually test besides powers, grounds, and that little communication line? All we have here is gray wire, gray wire, gray wire, gray wire. That's not really going to do much for us. Any one of these that we test here, we might see 1 volt, 2 volts. What's good, what's not good? They never actually told us anything. So we didn't have much there that we could test. If we had a failure, our options were replace the OPDS. Did that work? No, replace the OPDS unit. So we went from sensor to unit. Did that fix it? Of course, after checking powers and grounds. So long as I know it not, it hurteth me not. I saw this quote, and you guys know it a little bit more as what you don't know can't hurt you. I think that was probably a quote when they had absolutely no supplemental restraints, because what we don't know now can certainly hurt someone. So it became very clear to me back then that they had no airbags on horse and wagons, nor did they really care much for the occupant detection. So keep this in mind as we go through the years and realize what was missing in these early systems, and think of all the things that could and did go wrong. So back over to our timeline. 2004, we just had our 2000, now we're up to 2004. We move up to a implementation of a smarter system. The Acura MDX comes out. This is a flagship vehicle, lots of amenities. This was really one of their favorite vehicles that they spent some time designing. You guys can insert your own angelic music now. So do you have a pen and a paper? Because you're going to need it. Here's a piece of what's to come as we move along. Now, by the way, I said grab a pen and paper. There is a PDF available for all these slides as well. Hopefully you guys will be able to download that when we're all done. So we had seat weight sensors. Those are new. We didn't have those in the other one. What we had was that ladder style sensor. We have an ODS, occupant detection system, something that we're familiar with. We have the occupant detection passenger system. Okay, that still sounds like what we just started with, but they may be wording it differently. And then we have, of course, our SRS. So front passenger weight sensors. They placed them underneath the seat. They were right along the seat frame. And they were there to just basically detect that something was in the seat. They used a older strain gauge style sensor. We'll get into the testing on those. The weight sensor detected the weight on the seat and the information and sends the information to the front passenger seat weight sensor unit. Now, notice how they worded that, the front passenger seat weight sensor unit. They didn't say OPDS, they didn't say ODS unit. No, this is where lots of reading in the service information and making some, judgment calls are important. I see we have a question in there also from Keith Perkins. He wanted to know when I said replace the sensor or replace the module, he wanted to know whether or not we're replacing with a known good part. The answer back then is yes, you could. These were not programmed in a way that they were VIN locked or anything else. They were part swappable, and through the years, people think that continues on, and we'll see that that's not the case. So front passenger side seat weight sensors. If the total weight was about 65 pounds or less, the front passenger's weight sensor unit sends a signal to the SRS unit to prevent the passenger's airbag from deploying. So anything below 65 pounds, what were they looking for? They were looking for a child in a car seat. They were looking for a small child that was in the seat that he shouldn't be in. You have a 38-pound, 6-year-old that's sitting in the front seat. In the event of an accident, obviously that front passenger airbag comes out with a tremendous amount of force during the initial deployment. If the kid doesn't sit well in the seatbelt and doesn't fit well in that front seat with his restraints, obviously he could get hurt and possibly even decapitated, which is terrible. So when the passenger's airbag is disabled, the passenger airbag cutoff indicator is always going to come up on the center panel just to alert the driver. It says alter, but it should say alert the driver that the front passenger's airbag will not deploy in a collision. Just to let you know, that's verbatim from the factory service info. Spelling error is not me. So for the SRS to operate, drivers in front passenger side airbags must have. Front impact sensor must activate and send electrical signals to the microprocessor. Microprocessor must compute the signals, and depending upon the severity of the collision and whether the seatbelt buckle is on or off, send appropriate signals to the airbag inflator. Microprocessor turns the signals off, again, for anything at all less than 65 pounds. So when the driver's side seat is moved to a full forward position, the seat position sensor sends a signal to the microprocessor to moderate the deployment of the driver's airbag. That's new. We didn't have that in the older Civics. We didn't have that in the older Accords. In this car, again, they've introduced new technology. They put a driver's side seat position sensor in there so that in the event of an impact, if we have someone that's sitting right up against the steering wheel, and we've all seen them, we've all gotten in that car where, the 6'3" guy tries to get in that front seat and his knees are up on the dashboard. If we would drive that vehicle and our seat was fully forward, we have a dual stage airbag system. It can blow off as both at once, or it can blow in one stage. That helps with the severity. So during a one stage deployment, we will have a bag that only deploys just so much during during a short period of time. During a two-stage, where we're further away, we need to keep that airbag inflated for the time that we're actually coming forward towards the airbag. So they will have it where they look at the driver's seat position sensor and determine one stage or two stage, but that's for a whole other class. So again, the inflators receive the signals, must ignite and deploy the airbags. Side airbags, just to give you, this is just a little brief overview of it all. Side impact sensor must activate and send the electrical signals to the microprocessor, much like we had with the other impact sensors. Microprocessor again computes the signals and then determines whether or not the side airbag inflator has to be deployed. The SRS unit makes that determination all throughout these early vehicles. So we also have side curtain airbags. It says side impact sensors or roll rate sensor must activate and send electrical signals to the microprocessor. Well, what's the roll rate sensor in these vehicles? Some of them had, in this case here, the Acura MDX actually had the roll rate sensor separately. They had a external roll rate sensor. They did not have one that was built into the airbag module, as we'll see later on. The microprocessor must compute the signals. You guys get it. Anyhow, let's go on there and take a little bit of a look and see what we actually have in here and get an idea as to what it is as far as what new stuff is and some of the old stuff. Here's our passenger side seat weight sensor unit. We have a couple of things here that looks like we might be able to test. So here we have one wire that comes out, a red and a black. We have a red and a black, 2-wire seat weight sensor. That to me sounds like a strain gauge. I can go in there and I can do a test on there and look for voltage. Do I care what that voltage is? No, what I care about is, are they the same, right? We have an inner and an outer on this one. Are they the same? If both are at 0, that's great, right? That means that we have nothing at all applied. If they're both at 2 volts, that means we have nothing applied. It doesn't mean it's good. What it means is we have something that we can check. So this is where it becomes important to have, or back in the days, obviously 2004, we're getting a little old here, but I have to go through the old stuff first. We would have known goods. We would go out there and do a quick test on a known good while the car is in there waiting for the oil filter to come because we didn't happen to have it in stock. A quick check in here just to see, with nothing on the seat, what would we see on the strain gauge? Seat weight, something like that, have the same person sit in the front seat, and if they're not changing much weight, let's see what it actually reads on there. That was good. That was new stuff. We were able to do some testing on here, and we have a front passenger's weight sensor unit. Remember before we said front passenger's weight sensor unit, an OPDS unit, and an OPDS sensor. So here's our OPDS unit, same ODUS line that goes back up to the SRS. We have the PDW over here. Not sure what that is just yet, but in this case here, it's just going to be power. It should be POW, but of course, the factory service information says POW. And here, of course, is our warning indicator. But here we are looking at this OPDS sensor, and even though the picture didn't show it, it showed that there was no ladder style sensor. It's still there. We have upper elements, 2 sensors in the seat back. We have lower elements, 4 sensors in the seat back, and then a side element on the right side of the seat back. All right, so we had other sensors that are there, that we have these 2 weight sensors now, but they still relied upon this in order to determine height, so that they could come up with some kind of a rationality and say, okay, we think it weighs this much and he's about this tall, or she weighs about this much and she's about that tall. Of course, this system may have been designed by a divorce lawyer, who knows? But I guess that's probably why we don't have a little gauge up on the dashboard to tell us how much the person in the passenger seat weighs. So here we are, driver's side seat position sensor. We already spoke about that. That's a little bit more new stuff in there. Here's that roll rate sensor. Remember I said it's not in the SRS unit. We have a roll rate sensor that's external. So we saw some new components in there. We read a little bit about the system in operation. We know that the system has been upgraded a little bit to have some new logic that helps it to make determinations upon impact based upon sensor inputs given. So not much to talk about here, right? Surely nobody has any questions, right? Well, I had a lot. I had plenty of questions. How do we know that the seat weight sensor is actually properly working? How do we do that test? Does it require any calibration? Yep, that guy back there, he knows. Does the SRS module have the ability to determine that the weight sensors may be abnormal somehow? So what would it do for that rationality check? What if the SRS module is replaced? What do we have to do? What if the ODS was replaced? What about the OPDS? And why do I not see a position sensor for the passenger side seat? We were worried about it before with the driver's side, where we were getting too close to the airbag. But why not on the passenger side seat? Is it because of the distance between the seat to the dashboard? That's for us to guess. They never do actually tell us what that is. So let's answer a couple of them. The SRS module replacement will require you to initialize the OPDS. Replacement of the ODS unit will require you to initialize the ODS unit. Replacement of the seat weight sensor, of course, seat weight sensor initialization. There are individual, I wish we could have had a scan tool here that we could have done this with. Unfortunately, with the COVID, we didn't have a test vehicle that I could actually plug in there and grab you guys screenshots. So I apologize for that. But you'll see later on though in service information actually has screenshots of the screens. So we'll get there. Perhaps it's time to take a better look at what happened or what's required here and how we can handle this. So while calibrating the front passenger seat weight sensor unit, observe a couple of precautions. No components, make sure that all the components of the front passenger seat are correctly installed. All optional parts such as seat covers are removed. I'm going to pause on that. Seat covers. That also means if it came to you from a body shop and it has a new leather seat cover on there, even a new fabric seat cover on there. Remember, we have ladder style sensors that are on this unit still. If the seats themselves are being pulled too tight, we can have it triggering and telling us that there's still someone in the seat, or incorrectly reading the upper rungs while there's only pressure being applied to a lower rung. And of course, that's one of the things that we have to watch out for. So make sure that nothing is on or under the front passenger side seat, nothing in the seat back pockets, keep the windows closed, perform all the calibration procedures except test driving within the service bay. They had to tell us that, just in case you were thinking about test driving in the service bay. Now, truthfully, what that means is they had done the testing where they tried to put it either on a dyno. They've tried to do the testing where they put it up in the air, they brought it up on the lift. It's not a proper calibration procedure. They need to have some weight moving around on the seat. So make sure that the vehicle's on level ground and keep the AC and the heater off, unless the calibration fails. So we'll get there. Do not touch the front passenger side seat until you drive the vehicle, and do not expose the front passenger seat to any sudden temperature changes. Don't take your heat gun to the seat. Don't put a bag of ice on there, but we were already told not to put anything on it. They're very thorough. They give us lots of information of the things not to do. Now let's talk about what we need to do. So we need to position the front passenger seat to the rearmost position, adjust the seat height to the lowest position, adjust the recliner to the most forward position. Don't move it. That's key. Connect the HDS or a OE equivalent scan tool. It'll say HDS because, again, I'm going to read you guys what's in the factory information so that way we have the correct info coming to you. We want to drive the vehicle and accelerate it to 20 miles an hour and then stop on level ground. Not always easy to do, but it is required. And then from the tester's main menu, we're going to select SRS, then miscellaneous test, then adjustments, SWS initialization in the adjustment menu. Follow the prompts to the initialization operation. Remember, this is all in your PDF, so we're going to kind of run through it pretty quick. But then it says, prepare a weight between 55 to 77 pounds, then measure and note its actual weight with a scale. Huh? Where am I getting this weight? So I'm sitting here in the shop. The boss is in the office right now telling me that there's a waiter in there that's coming in here to pick up their car. The body shop sent them over to us. They figured, hey, we had it good to go, and we got that airbag light cleared, and I'm in a pinch. I need to figure out what I'm doing here to get this thing initialized. I know it needs to be initialized. It has a code 8179, and it says I need to do a seat weight sensor initialization. So I just went onto the Honda website to quickly look for a special tool. They have nothing there. There's no seat weight tool listed. So I did a little bit of research. So this is what I came up with. A case of Honda genuine coolant weighs approximately 58 pounds, and a gallon jug of VTM4 fluid weighs approximately 6 pounds. All right, so the actual weights of these products may vary from case to case due to fill quantity variations. I would hope it wouldn't vary too much. Otherwise we're probably getting gypped on what we're buying. But this was what they gave me as info. So what did I just find? Is it actually the special tool? Is this what it is? Where did I find this information, and why was it not mentioned initially in the service info? It simply said, get a known weight between 55 and 77 pounds. Why didn't it just tell me, go out there and get a coolant jug? So I think it's time for a little education on education before we go any further. Just a reminder to everybody, sometimes as techs out there in the field, we forget that the manuals are written with the thought that everyone out there in the field has gone through the same quality and course of education, meaning that they've completed all the same training modules, that they've become certified in whatever it is. They are under the opinion that when they write the manual, it's for a trained technician who's done this, who's completed a course for it. So did you guys all complete the Honda Acura SRS training series yet? No. There's no way to assume that everybody out there has been able to do this for these set procedures. So does that mean that we can't do a little bit of learning? I mean, that is what you're all here for right now, right? So let's see how I found that little bit of information and the seat weight tool. Yeah, I did it for you. So Honda Independent Repair website. It's the techinfo.honda.com. And what we'll do is if we go in there and we set up a login for this, we'll log our way in. And after that, you're going to see what we have available to us. And independent shops have access. It's not just factory. But what do we have access to? We have our service information system, IHDS, which is going to be our software as working as a scan tool. And then, of course, we have Vehicle Security Professional for key programming, things of that nature, J2534 programmings. You'll see over here, there's a whole chart for them, again, in your PDF. But I noticed something right away on here, though, that comes up, and I'll just get right over here to it and hop on to the next slide. But the training courses are available to everyone if they have a Service Info subscription. This is the part where we all get a little nervous, right? So it says right there, we have access to the Honda Service Course Catalog. Well, let's see. I mean, obviously, they have to have some kind of a big fee for this. And it's 1 day for $25. That's 1 day, not one car for $25. 1 whole day of training available to us for $25 for just about any vehicle that they have out there. We have all different types of training courses. We have communication courses, SRS courses, ABS courses. They have their own CAN network course, which was really informative. But I spent about 5 minutes, and within about 14 pages and 5 minutes of my time, I came in there and I found exactly that. Note, in your dealership, any precisely known amount of dead weight as specified in the vehicle's service information will work for this check. And that's where I found that information, because I had nothing. I had nothing else to go with there. It just simply said 55 to 77 pounds. Now, you can do exactly what it has here. Honda case of genuine coolant. You can do, if you have barbells that are there and you know what they are, and you can put them into a milk crate and lay them on the seat. Whatever it is, just make sure you know the exact weight that you're putting on that seat. So in one case here, we were just talking with another tech, actually, Chris Martino, also with IBS 360. He had said that when they needed to, they would sit there and grab 2 cans of 134A. Why not? 2 30-pound cans of 134A is going to be 60 pounds. So that was a known good weight that we could use in order to get us through this. But it wasn't in the service information. It just said a known weight between 55 to 77. So this is another thing while you're in there and you're looking at that service info. You want to look for job aids and notes, okay? Now, when you look at this job aid C, everything that I was mentioning before there, the OPDS unit was replaced, OPDS sensor was replaced. It gives us each one of these and tells us what it takes to complete the replacement procedure or repair procedure. So in this case here, a vehicle was just involved in a collision. Quick check of the SWS system, empty seat weight only, and then do a seat output check. That's great information. That's information that we need to know as the techs out there, that when we're done with the vehicle, that we're actually done. So here in the job aids and notes, there was something even more important that I came across, and here's one of the notes that's there. If the OPDS initialization fails on the first attempt, right, make sure that everything that you've done, you were set up, everything was proper. Go in there and perform that initialization process 2 or 3 times before it completes successfully, sometimes. Again, the Honda scan tool is preferred method of initialization calibration. However, in a rare instance that a scan tool cannot initialize the system, you can also manually calibrate either part of the ODS system or the SRS control unit using an SCS or MES connection. Because there's so many variances there of where the locations are, I did not include that here. It's in your service information. If you don't see it in the service information, spend the $25 for a day, or contact, like IBS 360, contact us. We can help you get through this. So, but again, do the little bit of research before you get it. So Google is your friend. If you don't have any weights, if you're not sure what you want to use, you can look up weight per gallon of antifreeze. Again, these are roundabout numbers. These are ones that they've tested, but it will come into play later on again. So back to the future. I mean, systems. So we saw the older systems using the ladder style sensor in the seat backs, which we also saw it on this one. We know that it was used in determining the height of the passenger. We know that it wasn't accurate enough, so we moved along to seat weight sensing combined with ladder, and we learned how to calibrate it with the seat weight. So has anything changed in any of the newer vehicles? And I'm just going to pause for one quick moment here and double check to make sure that we're not missing any questions. So Dylan asked, is that a two-stage airbag? I'm not sure which part we were on there, so I guess we'll get. I'll probably try to get more information. And if you, Dylan, if you're listening, just let me know which two-stage airbag you were concerned with. If we were talking about the passenger side airbag, the passenger side airbag on the 2004 did not have dual stage. Only the driver's side had dual stage. On later systems, we do have a dual stage as well. So has anything changed in newer vehicles? Let's move right up to a 2018 Honda Accord. We're going to jump ahead 14 years. And let's get a look and see what they actually have going on. So this is a little bit of a breakdown of the system. Might be a little bit hard to see on the screen. You might have to get your nose up there close. But we have a few new components that are here and a couple of components that may be missing. So the previous image made me realize a few things straight away. There's no separate ODS module on this vehicle. Doesn't have one. There's no longer any image at all of the ladder style height sensor, the height sensor that we saw earlier. So they've done away with it. They no longer have that ladder sensor in the seat back. And you'll see why. So we do notice also that there is an addition of new restraints like lap pretensioner, knee airbags, and I'll go back to it for a second there for you in case you missed it. But over here we have our outer lap tensioner. We no longer have a buckle tensioner on here. Some do have buckle tensioners. This one specifically does not. So they'll have the outer lap tensioner that connects to our actual seatbelt itself as it comes across. We have a clock spring, as always. We have a driver's side knee airbag. We didn't have knee airbags before. We have a front passenger's knee airbag. We have our front passenger seat weight sensors, no ladder style sensor in the back, and just a right side airbag. Nothing here for an ODS. So back to where we were. Again, I'm going to keep on pushing it. Research, right? This is a system that we don't know, so we want to learn as much as we possibly can about it. So when we go in there, for one of the first places that you should always go, SRS description and operation. We can go in there and look and read through it a little bit and try to get an idea as to what we don't know about the system. So in this case here, I put a little arrow on there for operation. I'm not going to read you the whole thing. It's there. It's in your PDF. But I thought the operation was important. The weight of the front passenger seat is detected by the weight sensors and sent to the SRS unit via LIN communication. So we don't need any ODS module anymore. What we have are seat weight sensors that actually communicate directly to the SRS module. So no longer any ODS there to do any kind of interpretation. And it also means to me that we can probably do some testing. What are we going to have there? We're going to probably have a 3-wire sensor, and we can do some testing with it. So the passenger side airbag, a cutoff indicator. Again, I won't go through everything that's on this screen. You'll have it in your PDF, but if you have any questions about anything that you see on here, while it's up on the screen, be sure to ask, and I'll make sure I try to answer them for you. So we read a little bit further, and then I came across something that sounds pretty interesting. It says, okay, we have a front passenger's airbag, SRS unit, which makes all of our occupant judgment. Our front passenger's airbag off indicator, and then we have our front inner side and rear inner side, 2 seat weight sensors and a LIN line. I like that. So seat weight sensors just like the 2004. Well, that's easy enough, right? We know how to do that testing. The only thing that we have different now is the LIN line. But what was that other part? Right down there, front passenger's seat sitting switch. What is that? Made no mention of that earlier. So front passenger side seat sitting switch is basically just that. It's a switch input. They have two little bars that come across there. They are nothing more than contacts that it has a predetermined amount of gel inside there that as you press down, it takes a certain amount of weight to come down on top of the seat sitting switch to determine that there's someone actually there. Someone's actually actively in the seat. It doesn't take much. It can take it anywhere from, I believe the spec that was on there was about 22 pounds. I had to get that from engineering. They do not have it available out there. They don't tell you what the spec is. In engineering, if I read it right, and I'm not an engineer, but if I read it correctly, it's about 22 pounds. So it judges whether or not there's somebody in the front seat and turns that switch on. So that's another input. So that's clearly a different animal altogether. We have an SRS module that makes the decisions. We communicate now by a LIN or local interconnect network. I'll get those words out. And we've added a seat sitting switch also to assist in the self-diagnosis process. But with the seat weight reading already being calculated, why do we need the switch? Think of it this way. So we have a vehicle riding around on the road, different size passengers, differing weights on the seat over time. If we have a seat frame that became even slightly distorted, what would happen to the seat weight sensor reading? So we have our rails, and we start to sit there, and after a while, we start flexing back and forth, and now the rails become slightly off. Remember where those seat weight sensors are. They're directly on the rail. So if we start to torque on the rail, could that cause us to have an improper seat weight sensor reading? So what about that vehicle that has a half a case of water bottles underneath 4 umbrellas? We've all seen them, right? The pen, the 2 sticky nickels that are sitting in the seat track, and the guys sit there and they force it back as they're trying to move the seat forward or backward. I mean, we've all had customers like that. So would any of these potentially cause a problem with the seat weight sensor or make it read abnormally during the absence of a passenger? So they added a seat setting switch. So if we have something there that our seat weight sensor is determining, let's say we have 38 pounds, 40 pounds, whatever it may be, is it legitimate? Is there anything that's actually there on the seat? So they have a preset amount that they think the seat sitting switch is going to have. If the seat sitting switch is on and our seat weight sensors are reading, there must be somebody there. But if we have seat weight and no seat sitting switch, or only maybe 10 pounds, but this is reading, our seat weight sensors are reading 60, clearly it's there for a rationality check. So come a long way in the technology and self-diagnostics of these systems. Will it make it any harder for us to work on? So are we going to require any new tooling? Will a replacement of an SRS unit be treated similarly to the replacement of the older style ODS modules? And that little chart that you saw earlier, the one that I popped up there that said Job Aid C, that still applies. That is the most up-to-date chart that they have available. So if you follow that chart and you look at whatever module you're replacing or whatever procedure you're going through, it will still be there. It'll be on there and tell us what the next step is to complete the process that we're trying to accomplish. So I'm going to give you guys like a little bit of an idea of a case study without being a real case study, but there's a body shop down the road that sends you a vehicle. And they tell you that they've replaced all the deployed tensioners, airbags, and finally they replaced the SRS module. But it's there for you to program the new module. Well, do we need to? So that's a very common scenario, and I think it's worth playing it out together. We grabbed a laptop and VCI, and we start the programming just like they asked. Well, no, not everybody. I think you guys are smarter than that. And if you're here already, I think you already know that I value research greatly. So you realize, of course, that it would be worth your while just to take a moment and take a look and see, like on that Job Aid C, what this programming is actually going to consist of. So I pull it up on here and I take a look and see what we have. SRS unit removal and installation. And we see on here, before installing the center console, make sure the SRS indicator works normally. Make sure the SRS unit has the latest software. If it does not have the latest, update the software in the SRS unit. Okay, fair enough. So we start with the programming. So we do a software update check first, which is nothing more than putting the VCI on there, logging in with IHDS or whatever it is that you're going to be using. Then we're going to move on to doing the yaw rate calibration next. And we already have that down pat with this passenger side seat weight sensor initialization. So software update check first, yaw rate calibration next. And one that we have down pat, well, it looks like I duplicated my slides. I apologize. So one little question though for you. Why yaw rate calibration? Well, because the VSA modulator receives the yaw rate and acceleration information from the SRS unit now. There's no separate rollover sensor. There's none of that. What we have is a smart SRS unit. So we just learned a little bit more description and operation just by reading through our procedures of what we're going to do in order to get this vehicle programmed. Now we know that there's a yaw rate initialization that we have to do. And without that, we may still have an ABS and VSC light on, or VSA light on. So when you replace or update the SRS unit, memorize the yaw rate acceleration neutral position. So this is what you'll see when you're in a scan tool. You'll see neutral position memorization. So it seems like every time that we spend a moment on research, we learn a little bit more about the system. We should always be in the mindset that what we knew yesterday may not apply to today's systems that we're working on. And that 5 minutes of research goes a long way to ensuring that we're testing, diagnosing, and programming or calibrating properly. So everybody with me? I hope. Still here? So you need more proof that research saves us from mistakes? Here's the front passenger's weight sensor initialization. But we knew this already. We've done this. We already knew what we had to do. But if you look down there at the very bottom of the screen, I just wanted to point out to you, prepare a weight between 22 and 44 pounds, and then measure and note its actual weight with the weight scale. We changed our minds. We had it before, right? We were at 65 pounds. But the other thing that's in here too, and I'll just point it out to you, is when we first do this programming, we're looking at our initial HDS reading to be within, well, it should be saying 0 pounds. So we know what the known good weights are to perform this operation. There's a little bit of service info in here that they're not very clear on, and I'll go back to that for a second. They're not very clear on this, and it doesn't say it on there. But you first initialize that seat weight to be 0. You didn't initialize it at 44 pounds. You initialized it to be a 0 weight calibration. We didn't do that before. Before, what we were doing was we were looking to see whether or not we were at 0 after we did a weight calibration. Now they want you to do the 0 first. So the 44-pound weight is just simply there to provide a check when the load is applied to the seat frame that the sensors are reading properly. That's all it's there for. That's your check. It's no longer you need that to initialize. That's there for a check, so that before we hand it back over to our customers, that we know that the vehicle is going to be safe. Case in point, and I'm going to give you, this is more of a case study for you, but one vehicle that I encountered out in the field, each time a woman placed her pocketbook on the front passenger seat after a previous collision shop did a repair and programming, it was causing an erratic operation of the passenger side airbag off indicator. The scan tool hooked up, quick test of the seat weight sensor as described in the after initialization procedure. What we saw just gave me an eye-opening that I was not expecting. I'll tell you that when I first went on there, we went in there and it has a seat setting switch, which, by the way, if you looked at the wiring diagram, it did not have it there. However, I had an input and it was there. It was on the scan tool. So secondly, the seat weight showed that showed a 0 with 0 weight applied. So nothing at all on the seat. I read 0, but, and there's always a but. Once I placed my laptop down on that seat, it read 208 pounds. Clearly, if it goes on to the next screen here. So what do we have to do now, right? We saw 208 pounds. There's no way that could possibly be correct. I have a 3-pound laptop sitting on the seat. So what do we have to do? Do we just re-zero it? Do we replace parts? In this case here, no parts required. And the problem with the seat weight sensor initialized just fine, but it was never checked again with a known weight afterwards. Service info again gave me something to try that honestly I probably would not have thought of if I had not actually went in there and read it a little bit deeper. So it said on there, if the variance is at or not within 4.9 pounds, right? Now this is with the 44-pound weight on the seat. Now, meanwhile, I was just sitting there with a laptop on the seat. I knew for sure that I had an issue here. There was a variance. It tells me to remove the front passenger's weight sensors and reinstall them, then repeat the procedure from step 1. Kind of interesting, right? They didn't say to test anything. the very first thing that they wanted me to do was remove the passenger side weight sensors. So sure enough, after I removed the seat frame and I bolted the seat weight sensors and I reinstalled, I performed the initialization again. I grabbed a packing scale just to verify. I grabbed 44 pounds of assorted containers that I found around the shop there. I have a packing scale. I was actually, I'd tell you right now, by the way, COVID times, there's lots of eBayers out there that are not doing as well as they were before. They have packing scales. They're floating back into the system again. You can find a $200, $300 packing scale that you know is accurate for about 20 bucks. So I grabbed a packing scale, got about 44 pounds altogether. I actually probably had about 45 if I remember right. I placed it in the milk crate and then I retested. I read 46 pounds. So I retested with adding the weight, removing the weight, bouncing on the seat, just about anything that you could think of doing. And in the end, it was not a seat weight sensor fault after all. So what happened was the seat frame itself had become slightly over torqued at the time of impact due to a larger than average occupant. The tip off for that was that the actual padding of the seat itself was completely worn down flat. Sometimes we have to be detectives in a way. And pay attention to some of the things that are there right in front of you. So taking a quick look at that, I realized, oh, you know what? I know what happened here. We had a larger than average person that was sitting there as an occupant, and during the time of impact, what we did was we sat there and we torqued that seat frame very slightly. It shifted very, very slightly, even though it's bolted down. That's a lot of weight to be restrained in a frontal impact. So service info inadvertently led me to a solution that, quite honestly, at the time I just didn't understand when I first read it. But yeah, sure enough, I learned a bit that day. And I hope that everybody here has learned a little bit from what I've presented so far. Seat weight sensors kind of sound boring. The information that we have on them, most of the time it's click a couple of buttons and we're doing a programming. But I will say that there is a lot to learn about this as the longer that you start to do some research. And I'll show you guys something here. I really hope that everybody could gain a little bit of insight from it. And if you think that you know all that there is to know right now about seat weight sensors, I'm just going to show you something on the next screen. It has a YouTube link on there. I will not be able to play that for you, but if you type that in, I know it's a little bit of an awkward address, but you can take a look at some of these newer systems. And I say newer hesitantly because this is one that OEs had actually accepted and made patents on back in 2016. We don't see them very often, but they're there. They're coming, and we know that because they've accepted the patents. They spent the money, the tens of thousands, to get the patents squared away. So we have now a seat occupant detection system that can actually do things like check vitals. The car was in an impact. They're sitting in the front seat of the car, and it actually uses a new pad that sits in the back that actually monitors temperature, and it looks for similar to an AKG, where you're sitting in the seat, and in the event of an impact there, if somebody was on the phone, let's say it was OnStar or something of that nature, and they were on the phone with paramedics and trying to get paramedics, and they blacked out, this is giving them an idea of urgency. So that data will also be transmitted. But what's interesting about these new ODS systems that we'll probably end up seeing soon is that they're wireless. Seat weight sensors are completely wireless. Everything that they're doing here, some are Bluetooth. Some of them are actually running their own private Wi-Fi network on the Wi-Fis that are already installed on the cars, but it's new and it's going to change. So yes, these are the older systems that I touched on. The 2018, even still kind of an older system now. We're starting to see some newer things that are out there, but what I really wanted to get across to you was that even the simplest of systems, obviously, can make you not only sit there and chase your tail sometimes during the diagnosis, but also surprise you with what they have. That seat sitting switch, that's a key thing, right? Like, that's not in the initial pictures. Those are the things that if we didn't know they were there, we would wonder, how did it set that seat weight sensor code? We like to try to find out all the hows and whys and whats in this business. And I think that was one of the things that hopefully I was able to get across to you. So without failure here. Let me just stop my screen share for a moment. And of course, we got to go through the trippy stuff. And I'm going to pop into the chat for a moment. I see some questions in here. Let me get in here. I'll thank you for whoever it was that actually reposted that link. I'm going to scroll back a little bit. So I did have one question here. I'm gonna address these questions as they pop up here because they've already been filtered for me. So, is there SI on recommended distance between occupant and bag? There is. That's for Corey Bergerman. There is some service information on that. It is more. I'll show you some of where you can find this information. It is not like you would think in normal service information. Let me do a quick screen share again for you and do it from here. Let's share this one. You're going to have to deal with the trippiness for a second. NHTSA. Hopefully you guys can see that there. On NHTSA, we have lots of information when we sit there and we do things. We look for child seat research here. I was doing a little bit of research on what the actual weights were now that they're using. They're actually moving up to 78 pounds simply because they believe that children have become larger. There's more to it though, but I'm also going to answer another question at the same time as this. Let's see. Keith Perkins asked, where's the butt-shaped weight at? Actually, Keith, it's kind of funny that you should ask that question. I will get that for you because I have said butt-shaped weight. And let me put it over here where we can actually see it for a moment. If it'll open for me. Sorry, everyone, I'm getting used to this whole screen share. But if I bring this over here, you should be able to see, here is your butt weight. Here's the legs, and here's the butt. That is a Chrysler weight scan tool. I'll even zoom that in a little bit for you there too, because again, these seat weight systems are being used by a lot of different manufacturers, pretty much every manufacturer at this point. But what we have here is multiple weights, fifth percent female weight. These were pre-calibrated. These were boxes of coolant, which I think is important. So we also had another question in here. Is any of this going to tie into ADAS in the future? All right, so I'm sure it will. I will give you this much. This is from Acura. I was looking in here and I decided to look a little bit, did a little bit of research for a customer today for a lane watch camera. And as I was reading through it there and when the aiming is required, I came across the millimeter wave radar. After a supplemental restraint system deployment. That's what they had in there. They said that after there was any type of an SRS deployment, that the millimeter wave radar would have to be aligned in order to keep this car safe. Does it mean it's going to turn the light on? None of that, right? But we're smart. We follow what the service information says. We do what they're telling us to do. So just to share that with you. Let's see, what's the next question in here? Yep, Matt Harold says he actually keeps a bathroom scale in his toolbox just for this, and that's great. Where else do we have here? Does it mention clearing codes in the SRS and SWS systems even when there are none? So does it mention clearing the codes in SRS and SWS even when there are no codes? It does not. I think I know what you're getting at there. I think you're asking whether or not the SRS light can be on even when there are no codes in the system. And if that's what you're asking, then that is an indicator that you have to get a little bit more information from the customer. You'll want to address the customer and say, has this vehicle been in an accident recently? If so, was the SRS module replaced, or do you have a receipt of what was done on this vehicle? And that's important because in this case here, let's say they did not replace the SRS module and we had no code in there. That could be a reason why the SRS light is on. It could also be a reason if we have no SRS light on and it was never initialized. We see that. Sometimes you'll go in there and there's no code. Sometimes it would be nice enough to give you a code 8179. There are times that it will not set a code. I think that's what Keith was after. But But yeah, again, service information, if you do follow it, it will lead you there, a little bit roundabout, but it does get you there. But I thought it was important though also though to make mention of the ADAS integration here, right? At some point here, they're kind of hinting to us, I think, that our SRS system is going to sit there and flag a code in the millimeter wave radar to say, hey, we were in an accident. You're going to have to get recalibrated because you may have been shifted. So let me stop that screen share for a moment and take a look through the rest of these questions. As far as sharing the PDF, I wouldn't be able to answer that one for you, Steve, but I'm sure that we can talk about that afterwards. So Craig says that he had the training in 2008 when he left the Honda dealership, and you still have it now. It's there. It's available. Yes, it's $25, but you can go through as many vehicles as you want. You could go through and print and copy and save PDFs of whatever it is that you need to do in order to help yourself learn. So that $25, make it last. Go in there and do as much as you possibly can. Perkins responded back there. He says, I asked that because I had an SRS light on, an SRS unit replaced, OPDS and SWS calibrations all done with no codes, just had to clear the codes and it went away. I have seen that. I don't have an answer as to why that happens. I wish I did. And I know you try to hang me up on that one, but the answer is I don't know why. And yes, it does happen. Let's see here. They'll be using a vital sign detector in some ADAS They will be using the vital sign detector assembly in ADAS systems. It will help the vehicle to understand the attention state of the driver. It will also be installed in the driver's side also for accidental vital sign detection, like you said. You guys see that comment? Save it, copy it, paste it, do your research now. Find out who's using that, and then keep on reading a little bit more. It is an SI. I thought it was, Keith. Thank you, Richard, for saying great job. I'm glad you guys, I hope everybody picked up something off of this. It's not my normal procedures and not the normal way I would be presenting my information. Don't forget, if the seat cushion metal bracket breaks, like on a 2004 Tahoe, that it can cause the seat padding to shift. Good point. Certainly, right? That's part of that visual that we do. We want to make sure, like I said before there, when I noticed that the padding was completely compressed, you get a feel for who's normally in that seat, right? That didn't happen by accident. That happened over time. And so it gave me an idea that, hey, maybe this is what actually caused it. Let me go back and forth here. I have ones that are coming in here. Okay, those are all ones that we've covered so far. Are any of these things going to tie into ADAS in the future? Yes. So we got to that, I hope. Give them a defib from the hybrid battery. Well, who knows what will come in the future. In doing this, I actually got in touch with the person that wrote the patent for Ford right now, and that's where I gotten some of that information as far as the new seat weight sensing systems. They can't tell you everything about it. What you could do is you could read the patent and try to get as much information as you can out of it. But of course, then a lot of it is actually being held back. So there's a note up there, by the way, for everybody. Remember to download the handout, and I will repeat that for you as well. Also, if you're not aware, there's an offer in there. And I'm going to take a quick peek over there at the offer just so I can remind myself as well. But IBS 360 is actually doing a support 7-day free trial. So take a look into that offer. It's there. Make sure you click on that before you leave. Go back up. Make sure I haven't missed anything new. All right. Any further questions, or we good to go? I'll wait for the boss man to let me know. Is it good to close out here? But in the meantime, though, I do want to thank everybody for hanging around. Scott, good to see you here. Thank you. Michael, terrific to see you here as well. Everybody here. These are all people I know. Yes, wireless sensors, Ivan. That's one of the things that we're going to see. And again, they're showing two different types of systems out there. I'll tell you, there's a wealth of information out there to start doing some research on. If you really think that the seat weight sensor systems that we have, even in 2018, are going to be anything like what we're going to have by like 2025, we have a lot of changes coming. we have vehicles that it can essentially drive themselves down the road now, right? We have self-driving vehicles, and we're getting closer and closer to that. Scott Brown, he can tell you, I'm sure that you know there's lots of information out there. We are preparing an ADAS class as well. I know that there's something in the works. We don't have it yet. I can't give you any information on it yet because I'd be lying to you. I do know that there's something in the works, and I think that's, you know, I think that we'll be able to provide a lot of information, and I'm going to try to get on that team as well and see what I can provide as well. More informative than you imagined. That was the goal. Thank you. That means a lot. All right. That's it. Boss Man says it's okay to sign off. Again, if anybody has any questions or anything at all, this will also be going over to YouTube as well. I'm pretty sure, Boss Man. Let me know. I know we have 40 seconds here to wait, so. But I just want to make sure also, though, but I'm pretty sure, though, that this is going to go over to YouTube as well afterwards. It will be rebroadcast there in case anybody missed it. And if so, yes, I got the yes from the boss. So it will be there. So if you have any other comments, questions, or anything like that, if you leave them there, one of us will certainly address them, if not me myself. But again, thank you, everybody, for spending your afternoon with me, and get back to work. Take care. Be safe.